We're going through till 8:15 this evening, New Zealand time, and it's really good that we've had so many of you turn up. Hope you've had something good. We tried to bridge the meal gap between leaving work and getting home for your lettuce when you have dinner. It's my pleasure to introduce the panel who are going to be discussing the theme, Pasifika Sportspeople, all brawn, no brain. Right. Firstly, to my left is Peter Courts, who is of Samoan and Māori descent. His father originates from the village of Mangiangi, Samoa, and his mother has tribal affiliations with Ngāti Wai and Ngāti Hine. He was born in Auckland, raised in Mangere, and attended Mangere College. He's worked in sports fitness and in the sports fitness recreation industry training organisation as an industry advisor specialising in sport and Pasifika traineeships, and then as industry liaison manager before progressing his career as the general manager for the Rugby League Foundation. His most recent position was general manager of New Zealand Rugby League. At present, he is the chief executive officer of the Pacific Business Trust. Please welcome Peter Courts. To his left is Leau Pepe Ta'ala Ralph Elika, who is the managing director of Elika Sports and Athlete Management. He is Samoan, has been a commercial lawyer and litigator for 6 years, and over the last 3 years has been running his current company, which is Elika Sports Management, managing athletes in different sports aside from rugby and league, such as boxing, netball and triathlon. He's involved with industry-related committees such as the AUT Sports Management Advisory Panel and groups like the Sa Ngato Malaki Choir. Please welcome Leau Pepe. And to his left is Evelyn Stanley, who is first and foremost, she writes, a mum of 7 children ranging in ages from 38 through to 22 years old. They've been blessed in being able to care for Benny, making up their 7th. Very proud to be a grandmother of 5 grandchildren ranging in ages 3 to 6 coming up in December, and her biggest achievement is ensuring that all her children have good health. She's also very proud to hail from the Rock Niue and of Samoan ethnicity. Her mother, Evelingi Tama, was born in Vaimoso, Samoa, and her father, Pulutau, is from Alofi, Niue. Please welcome Evelyn Stanley. To her left is Tony Kemp, General Manager of High Performance at New Zealand Rugby League. Tony is a former international and experienced professional player and has a background in top-level coaching, serving as national selector and working in the high performance area for New Zealand Rugby League. Taranaki raised, he appeared in 25 tests for the Kiwis from 1989 through to 95 and played for several clubs in Australia and England, including Newcastle, Castleford and Leeds. He later joined the Vodafone Warriors as assistant coach, going on to fill the head coach's position in 2004 and 2005. Tony heads the NZRL High Performance Department and leads an experienced team who are committed to further developing pathways to excellence. Please welcome Tony Kemp. And finally on our panel is Brian Evans, who is the principal of Kelston Boys High School. Recently earned a Master's in Education with his thesis on strategies that cause high achievement amongst Pasifika males, and is now working on a PhD. Since taking over as principal of the school, he's achieved huge increases in percentages across levels of NCEA, and in particular up to 35% increases for Pasifika students. Brian is the current coach of the World Cup winning New Zealand Black Ferns rugby team and received an Order of New Zealand Merit for services to rugby. He's also coached national and world championship winning first 15s. Recently he coached the Safotu village team from Samoa. With regard to education and or sport, there's no such thing as maybe or perhaps with Brian. It's let's get this done, and it does happen. Please welcome Brian Evans. So folks, they've got mics and I'm sorry that one of our chairs is a little bit, or 2 of them, but it doesn't matter about me, it matters about them. So sorry to Peter who drew the shortest straw. I want to begin by asking our panelists thanking them for coming this evening. But I want to begin by asking, the nature of sport now is such that a lot of our young people aim towards going into professional careers. Are they going to be cared for when they get there? So I know there's things around sports agents, and we're going to get a bit more specific, but do you think it's something they can truly aspire towards? Is someone going to be there to care for them from the experiences that you've had? Anyone can start. Go for it.
Look, I guess, and having served 10 years of my life working in rugby league, for rugby league, a lot of my experiences are obviously based around that space. But I think it's important that young people understand and their families understand that professional sport at the sharpest end is actually not about caring for them. It's a business. You know, and that's not to say everything about it's well, it can't be better than it is, but the people who run professional sport are in the business of selling commercial property. So I think it's risky to start on the basis that will I be looked after if I make it to the sharp end of professional sport, because actually that's not their job. Their job is to win premierships, you know, sell broadcasting rights, sell licensing rights, and get bums on seats. So yeah.
Do our parents understand that? Do you think our Pasifika parents go into this thinking, oh, I'm so glad we're going to have someone who's going to nurture my child through whatever it is, where they end up playing for Otago?
Maybe I can come in at this point as a mum. I'm actually a little bit, I think, an exception to the rule in this Talanoa session, where it is Jeremy, my son Jeremy, is our oldest, and Jeremy is actually our first, our youngest Pacific Island orthopaedic surgeon. So in terms of brawn versus brain, Jeremy has been able to come through on the educational side of it. For all our young children, I think with a lot of our parents, lots of children aspire to be an All Black or a Kiwi or, you know, an athlete, that type of thing. But I think in reminding or making sure that first of all our children should always just aspire to be as good as what they can be in anything that they choose. Not denigrating that the man who sweeps the streets, you know, that's a job and he does that very well. I know our ones in Panmure do. It's making sure our children are aware that whatever you do going forward, but when it comes to playing in sports and doing things like that, there's a different focus, as Peter said. It is a business now. It wasn't when Joe was playing. It did develop into that when Jeremy started playing, but his focus stayed always. He never wavered from education first and sports second. And that's a long time. That's the hardest thing. It's learning and being educated. For our parents and understanding, for our children, we only want the best for our children. So yeah, great if you've got the gift in being able to pass or run fast and kick and become a sports person or swim, you know, and win in the pool and things like that. But just learning to be a good person, staying grounded, being balanced, being aware, hoping that, you know, I just met this young man here and he's a sports agent. I didn't know anything about sports agents. I know a very good young man, Craig Innes, who does that position now, and I do know that he does take care, but it is a business, as Peter says. But for our young children as parents, I think it's just ensuring that whatever they wish to choose, whatever they do, it's always learning, it's always education, because sadly a lot of our Pacific people who go into that arena of sports, a broken leg or an injury, that's soon cut. And so when you've got nothing to fall back on, that's very hard. And you have that, you know, when you come from going to earning money straight out of school and things like that, when you find that an injury will put you back and you have nothing to look back on, then it's quite sad if you don't have some sort of train or some learning to be able to push you through. So you know, education has always been the main focus in our household, regardless of whether or not Jeremy or the other children were going to take up a sporting career. It was always education first, and a lot of our parents, you know, I think still maintain that focus.
I want to come back in a minute to the fullback option if we get injured. But what's been topical this week has been Sonny Bill Williams, who's now signed with the Roosters. Is that the extreme end of the business of sport? Is that what Coda Nass has turned him into, that extreme end of he sells? Is that what he's good for? Tony, you've had some words around this in the paper recently.
Yeah, just going back to your previous questions, the answer to that is no. We're not getting looked after. Our kids don't get looked after. They go into a professional career way too early, especially taken out from their own family base here, especially in Aotearoa. The Whaia here was just talking about education. The thing with the parents is that the parents don't know any better. So we've got to do a lot better job in and around educating the parents who will then mentor the kids to make quality decisions, and also in and around player agents and that, actually understand what they do before they go ahead and do it. So a lot of player agents in a hurry, they white bait kids, they're looking for the Sonny Bill Williams. Leading into the Sonny Bill Williams, now Sonny is a player agent's dream. He's $1 million. I called him Sonny Bill Billions this morning. So he's come into $1 billion sport, and he's made them more money just by putting his name on a piece of paper. Broadcasters are happy, merchandisers are happy, stadiums are happy, fans are happy, coaches are over the moon, players are happy, everyone's happy because Sonny Bill Williams is back in the game. But that is the dream. When you get a 14-year-old kid coming through Kelston High School, and he gets approached by a player agent gives him a piece of paper, he signs it, he forgets school. And that's what we do poorly. So, the purpose of a role that I play in is to say, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but first and foremost, we, especially as Pacific Islanders, we work better in our own environment. You take us out, and I was one of those kids, when I went to Australia as a 17-year-old, I went into a house with 5 Aussie boys. We had an Australian mother, her house mother. I cried in the pillow every night because I wanted to go home to my mum. But because I come from the country, I was a little bit tougher than the Aucklanders. and I stuck it out. But no one hears those stories. So, like I said, you're talking extremes. Sonny Bill Williams is way up here. Yeah. We've got, the average game, if we put statistics behind it, is 44 games in the NRL. The success rate, if you're playing NYC, is 22% of NYC players go on to play NRL. So it's a really, really hard gig. Now, if you sat down and told parents that, and they had education on one side and NYC on the other, I know what I'd be doing with my kid.
Now, Pepe, you're a sports agent, for want of a better term. I know that outside we were saying we need to change the language a bit. Is it as crude as that? Is it, we see that we spot some talent, and up until perhaps you joined the sports management arena, that's what sports agents were doing with young people?
I think to an extent, exactly what he said is true. And that's probably one of the reasons that inspired me to transition into this industry from the legal industry, was primarily it is that crude. There are agents that will come in, again, not too fuss with that word, but agents that will come in and they will identify the talent, and then they will almost exploit that talent to the extent where they'll focus on maximizing the gain. And again, that's part of the management and agent's job. And that's one thing I think I agree with Tony on that, in terms of educating the support network. That's a crucial element of any player, regardless of your age. If you can educate that support network, make them understand the expectations of management, understand the expectations of an agent, what's required, then that will probably put them in a better state of making the right decision moving forward. Right now, all they'll see is exactly what everyone here has said. They'll see the flashing lights, they'll see the, possibly their kid getting on TV. But the one thing that, I always have to emphasize when I speak with parents and I speak to brothers or uncles or players, is just to emphasize that at the end of the day, only the top percentage get into professional sports, and that's the reality. Like the harsh reality is you can be amazing in school, but it doesn't mean that you're entitled to a position into either 20s in the Toyota Cup, or you're entitled into ITM Cup. Like you still have to get your way in there, and once you are in there, it's the support networks that will ensure that you will transition in and that you will look at your options after sport. And I think the crucial thing is if you can get it early, if you can understand that at the end of the day, being a sportsman, being an athlete means I've only got 10 years. 10 years to try and maximize. That's on a good day. That's 10 years on a good day. Like if you're starting at about 18, you got to basically think, well, in 10 years I have to maximize my commercial value. I have to make as much money as I can within that 10-year period. So every decision, every contract that I do has to ensure not that I get just money on the table, but I also put myself strategically in a position where I can get the franchise to pay for my education, where I can get the club to pay for these things. And that's part of what our management company does. We try to ensure that you do get the best of your buck for the player, to ensure that, people always say you can just play sport, but we try to broaden the horizons, similar to what Evelyn was saying, to ensure that there are education incentives, that you don't have to do the full degree in 3 years, that you can do part-time study, that you can do alternatives as a professional. And it's just ensuring that their game plan and their goals that they set from that 1 year to 5 year period at a time is to ensure that it's a holistic approach, not just sporting in that sense.
Yeah. Brian, you see a lot of these students, a lot of them come out of your school. Is there pushback from parents when they realise it might be a bit more challenged than they first anticipated?
Definitely. Yeah. Can I just say I think I'm the exception because you didn't even mention my ethnicity, but it's okay. It is a big thing in the schools now, and so we get a lot of people approaching the school wanting to talk to young players and so on, and we have to manage that now and work with the parents. I gatekeep who comes into the school to talk to the athletes, and I always make sure there's a first team coach or a league coach or myself will sit in on the meeting and get the reality of it going, because no matter how much we can talk until we're blue in the face about education, and to be honest, where I am at the moment, the coaches 120% support it. So boys in our first 15 or our league team don't play unless they're up to date with schoolwork. And I've seen it, and they do it. They don't just talk it, they do it. And I recently, with a certain league club, wouldn't sign a player off. He's a top kid, really good boy, he's a prefect, but he had just slipped away on his schoolwork, and I said, I'm not going to sign it until you catch up. And he'll catch up in the next month, and that'll be good for him for the rest of his life. I think the big thing for us is when they leave, we can't control it, obviously, it's out of our hands, but I think they need to hear that they're commodities, and it's about winning and losing, and just like my job, any other job, because I don't think they really get told that part, and I don't think they understand what's going to happen to them. Particularly even the successful ones. I've taught a lot of guys, coached a lot of guys who are in their late 20s now. Great guys, but I shudder because I just look at them and think, when you stop being an All Black, you're going to be lost, because they haven't done enough study, they haven't done a lot of backup work. They're all of a sudden going to stop playing. The whole lifestyle's taken away. The breakfast that's put on, the physio table, it's the whole package that they don't get, that they're going to be one day, they've just stopped dead in their tracks. They're not even going to be popular, some of them, anymore. There's going to be new players out there. Everyone's going to want to be like.
They're going to say you're ugly.
I think they will. Yeah, so I think that's the thing that when I, from years of working with guys and coaching them and looking at them now and just think, you're going to be lost, mate. When your career's finished, that whole support system's gone for you.
Brian used a word that I didn't, but I'm glad you did, because, and I felt like the baddie at the front end by saying it's not professional sports job to look after your kids, because it isn't, but you're exactly right. If more families and more young people understand that by the time you arrive at the sharp end of sport, you become a commodity, then you can manage your risk on the way through. And I think it's important that communities help manage that risk as well. So while it's not the NRL's job to look after your kids, outfits like NZRL, so as a national body of a domestic sport, you have a duty of care. As a school, you have a duty of care. So, so there are different levels of this. And in saying, is Sonny Bill the sharp end of this? He's absolutely the sharp end of this. Sonny Bill is the poster boy for what professional sport can look like. He is You know, I was the GM at New Zealand Rugby League when he went across. So nobody's heart more broken than mine about losing him. Only because I think he's a waste in that code, but that's a whole other story. But the reality was, he was one of those marquee players, and you know, Craig Gow went, Mark Gasnier went, whose value to the commercial property that is the NRL wasn't being recognised within the salary cap. Had management, had advice, whatever it was that helped them understand that actually I add value here that I'm not being recognised for. And today you're hearing that stuff more overtly. You're hearing today that, you know, Sonny Bill back in the premierships added $1 million to the broadcasting rights out of New Zealand. Clubs are queuing up for those home games against the Roosters and want to go to bigger venues and want to make sure that they maximise their return. Even the Bulldogs, you know, who've been screaming blue murder since he left, they want to make sure that they get an earn from that game. So, you know, that is absolutely the sharp end. You know, he's brand SBW. He's the brand that even had the biggest brand in this country and arguably one of the biggest sports brands in the world, in the All Blacks, allow him to box as part of his contract. You know, so I'm not saying he's bigger than that brand. He's just, he understands his value. He's maximising that value. At the other end, all the kids that come in at the end, at that other end of the production line, and that's, you know, that's where Tony's doing a lot of his work. That is where we do have a duty of care, and there is a lot of the care is just around managing their expectations, making sure that they understand that very few of them. I spoke to sports academy groups over the years. You know, if I was talking to 20 boys, I don't know how the stats are now, Tony, but back then, fewer than 1%, a fraction of 1% of the kids that come into our system actually go on to full-time careers. And to tell these boys that of the 20 of you sitting here, statistically, none of you is going to make it. I'm not trying to burst your bubble, I'm just trying to tell you that you need to make some plans for not making it. And I think that's a big part of the duty of care that these organisations... Actually, I did want to point out something that's not on Tony's CV, and talking about players that understand their value and are prepared to buck the system. Tony's a player who changed the face of professional rugby league forever in the late 80s when he challenged NZRL's international development fee system, transfer fee system legally, and won. So I know it cost Tony a fortune personally. There were prohibitive international transfer fees. New Zealand Rugby League had $1 million in the bank just from players transferring overseas. But Tony's win paved the way for everyone that's gone since. So, you know, it's been going on a long time, the struggle, and you know, just, I guess, acknowledging Tony as part of that early wave of players who actually realise that they do have some value.
Well, one of the tweets we got earlier before coming on this evening was, we're only valuable because we're strong and we're not thinkers. And we've heard commentary around cricket, some cricket players and some are, and you know, we don't occupy the number 10 jersey because we can't think, apparently. And I want to hold that thought as well as the other side of the coin is discussion around a lot of our Pasifika people don't go into admin type jobs. Now you two are an exception, but when you start looking at administration, the decisions aren't perhaps being made by Pasifika people. I don't know which one you wanted to start with. But is there a sense that you feel that we're just the players, we are just the all brawn, and the no brain bit is because there's perhaps an invisible ceiling that doesn't get us into administrative roles?
I'll say a bit before I hand the mic over to a chap who was admitted to the bar, a barrister at the High Court. You know, this all brains, no brawn. I feel humble. That's why I sat this low next to him.
Oh, you're very good, Peter.
Yeah.
It's culturally sensitive of you.
But you know, I think even though Tony and I have been privileged enough to play a part in some of the decision making that goes on at the highest level of a game in this country, I think one of the issues for us as a community is that our athletes, both Māori and Pasifika, generate a lot of, if not the majority of, the commercial value in and around these properties, but not enough of us are close to the action where those big money decisions are made. You know, and I think that has to be an issue for us as well. Boardrooms, it's all well and good for us to be highly represented on the field, and even in the coaching ranks and development ranks, but it's boardrooms, it's those front offices where the big decisions are made that we do need to be. But that's about education as well. So I applaud Ralph for a decision he's made. I'm going to hand him the mic.
I think with that too, you've got a lot of players that they get stuck in the professional era and don't think about life after football. So administration to them is it's a pipe dream. You know, it's something that maybe I'll do, 5 years after my career finishes. Whereas I use it like a clamp. You know, if you get your boys operating on someone's knee and he shoves a clamp on it, well, you're bleeding money when you're a footballer. You got that much, you can't get rid of it. But once you finish playing football, they shove a clamp on it. It happens that quick. So you go $300,000-$400,000 down to what am I going to do next? And before you know it, you're a $50,000 labourer. And they think the pipe dream, 5 years' time, I'll get into it. By the time that 5 years go past, they're broke. They're actually in no position to think about, oh, geez, I should have jumped into that administration role. So I think going forward, especially with the likes of my role, linking schools, organisations, player managers, parents into the same type of philosophy, we should purposely celebrate the types of decision that you make where in the NYC, what Brian was talking about, in the NYC, if you've got a kid that's at school and they want him to play in the NYC, they actually have to get the principal to sign it off so that he can play. Now the principal has the right to say, no, you're not doing your schoolwork, so get and do your schoolwork before you can play, and that's what we should be all doing. Because we're too quick to push them into a professional sport and we take our hands off them and forget about them. So on the round table philosophy, there needs to be a lot more colour. You know, that's, I think that's a historical battle that we're playing at the moment. You're talking about there's no one in the number 10 jersey and there's no one in the number 7 jersey. I think in around the board table, that's how they think, is that we don't deserve to be sitting there. And, I've got no problem saying that. But people do deserve to be there. If you look at how structured some boards are and what people bring to the table, a lot of them actually don't do what they're meant to be doing. And, if you've got sports people with knowledge that actually, if you're looking at our community that you're talking about short twitch fibres, they suit the game of rugby league, they suit the game of union, they suit netball, whatever, then they actually should have the people on them boards that understand what those kids are going through. So you got the boards making decisions about kids that they don't know nothing about, and that's a travesty.
I can add to that. I was recently at a meeting with the New Zealand Rugby Union about that very issue with Pacifica, the drop-off from the numbers playing, particularly in Auckland, where there's huge numbers of Pacifica players, then to refereeing and coaching, down to admin, where it virtually dries up. And I mean, my attitude to them about it was, because they're adamant that the pathways are open, and I guess they are open, but it's a steep issue. And the world at the moment, say in Auckland and in sport and New Zealand, is run by probably people my age and older, Palangis, who it's hard for them to get their head around what the change is. And their clubs are now full of Pacifica players, any sport, league, rugby, and it's simply people fear things. So they will say, why don't you guys get on the board? And I've heard them say it. But then the young guys I talk to, they go, well, I don't really want to go on that board because it's too scary. Yeah. And so it is really people of my generation who have to do the changing. And it's just like an education system. We have to change. It's not the kids. They're great. And that's a battle. When I'm, talking with New Zealand Rugby Union, trying to explain that we need to educate the people in the administration roles now so they open up and get their worldview a bit larger. And that's going to be a massive job. But in New Zealand, particularly in Auckland, the next 20 or 30 years, not just in sport, but in all walks of life, we need to start doing it because the world has changed. And, you've got to get your head around it. And if we want to do well as a society, in sport, business, whatever, education, we need to start getting our heads around it and meeting people in their world as well. Otherwise it's going to be, I don't know what it'll be like. It'll be interesting.
I'll take a couple more responses and then we'll go to the floor for a question. Leo Pepe.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think one thing that we have to emphasize and really ensure that a lot of people understand is that good players don't make good coaches, and good players don't make good administrators. And that's one thing that we need to educate our Pacific people as well, that you don't have to be an ex-Manu Samoa, or ex-Tongan player, or ex-All Black to automatically have the qualification to step into a boardroom. Like, there are qualifications that are on offer at the AUTs, at the Unitechs, that can actually, really assist a lot of our young Polynesians coming through. Like, one thing we talked about was that not all of them are gonna be superstars. They're not. But the thing is, a lot of them love sport. I myself, I didn't play for any major teams or any affiliation of any sort of major team, but I've always loved sport and I've always loved Polynesian people. And the truth is, a lot of the athletes I have are Polynesian because I have an affinity with them. I understand their journey. I've been there, I've done that, I've done culturally. I'm probably more aware than most player managers because I understand the importance of family, understand the importance of sitting down, not talking to the player, but also speaking of the family overall. Like, I sit there and I'm comfortable. I don't walk in there scared going, oh man, there's 50 people here and now I'm used to it. I mean, when people used to ask me about, Ralph, how helped you in your business decision? Who helped you with business plan? I said, oh, my dad. And they go, oh, is he a businessman? I know he's not. But he's someone that I know I trust. He's someone that I've always listened to, someone that I know will give me the advice that I need to hear. He may not have a master's in business, he may not have a fully functioning business, but at the end of the day, I'll listen to him as opposed to some 10-year business professional who rocks up and says, I can give you amazing advice, Ralph. I can give you the guidance. I'll be like, well, actually, I'd rather listen to this old man who's a factory worker for 20 years, because at the end of the day, I believe that he will give me what I need, and he will give, you can't teach wisdom. And so that's one thing, that understanding that logic, understanding that background, and putting it in that cultural context means that I am better equipped to assist a lot of our Polynesian athletes because I can understand. And then providing that professional background, that's just another tool to the shed, if you want. So what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, there are other Polynesian athletes out there that aren't going to make it. They're not. But who's to say that they're not going to be great administrators? Who's to say that they can still play sport for the love of sport and still be able to infiltrate the Old Boys Network that we all know exists and we all know is out there, that is basically the barrier and obstacle that is stopping a lot of our Polynesian people from coming up into those higher roles, into those boardrooms. And that's one thing I really want to emphasize, that you don't have to be those players. As long as you do those those management courses, administrative courses, and work towards it, get involved with the community, you will have a better standing in terms of delivering those administrative services. And I think that's one thing that a lot of us miss. And being in the industry for the last few years, you see that. Like, people will say, oh, life after rugby, there's only so many commentary jobs, so many columnist jobs, so many, there's only so many jobs you can do, like life after sport. So, and a lot of them say, oh, you should do administrative, and it's almost a default setting. So if you can, but at the end of the day, there are guys out there right now that I know that love their administrative stuff, and it's not a default setting. It's actually something they're passionate about, and they're the ones that are missing out, that I feel that we really got to ensure that those unsung heroes do come through the food chain, and that if we can identify them coming through the system, through these educational institutions, then we can probably, hopefully, work with the likes of guys like Tony and these professional setups to identify them coming through and bring them in.
Yeah, cool. Evelyn, did you have any thought? Did Jeremy ever want to become an administrator?
No. I find, as I say, an exception to the rule, I mean to, because Jeremy's been brought up in a family where sports, his father was an All Black. So Jeremy always could tap into the likes of a Grant McCarrow, who had his own accounting business. So financially, if you wanted to know about things like that, and Mr. B.G. Williams, who is also like extended family, so B.G. could give advice on, so when I look at other children or other players, for us, Jeremy has always been able to select and from a pool that he's always grown up in. When I watch young children today, see, I'm new to listening to people coming into schools. That was not in an era when Jelly was playing, when Joe was playing. My role as a mum, my role was to ensure I don't know anything about sports. Sorry people, I don't know about the forward pass or the 10-metre thing or whatever. I'm there to ensure. I just go to the game and yell and scream like other parents, like all mums, and I ensure that at the end of the game when that whistle blows, my son comes off, my children come off, and they are not hurt. That's my role. I ensure that when they're at home, that they're learning, that whatever they're doing, getting them to practices, that's my role. When you're the talks about being in administration and things like that, it's all learning, it's all about education. Our children who go to play, Jeremy went on, academically and wanting to strive and he'd always wanted to be a doctor. In terms of being an administrative person, I'm not sure the likes of Mr. Courts and Mr. Kemp here, that you go on to being and doing things like that, that's all from learning, that you go from one path to another. But sadly, a lot of our children, as they say, now they're looking at them or something with agents coming into schools and making them come or sidetracking them onto doing something else. I'm sort of new to that. I don't understand that. If that's the role that you want to go down to in terms of our Pacific people leading in into those positions in sports, that still comes from learning. It still comes from education. So I always will foster and nurture and push forward the education side of things before the sports.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a question just here from someone in our audience.
Talanoa, my name is Catherine. I'm 23 and I'm a club secretary at the moment at a rugby league club in Auckland. As a young Pacific Islander administrator, I struggled this year to kind of break into the old boys club, I guess we can call it. I found that even though I was really, really passionate for going into the administration side, that I found that there was a lot of opposition from people who had been at the club for 10, 20, 30 years, who've been playing, who've been doing administration for so long, to even try and understand how the club works or how the administration works. And a lot of them questioned my experience, not knowing that I had board experience at both a national, regional and an international level. But it was just not being able to be given the opportunity to prove that you have that experience, that you have the capability of holding that kind of responsibility. So I can understand why young people, especially young people, find it difficult, and we find it difficult to lure young people into these kind of roles when we ultimately sometimes face the old boys club, and it's boys who may have played, may have coached and have come back in administration roles, or who have had children playing and have come into or stepped into administration roles throughout the years. So how do we combat that how do we combat that culture within clubs? Because ultimately we're pushing away the future of our sports, or of people who are going to carry on our league clubs and our tennis clubs and etc. like that.
Dealing to the old boys network.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Firstly, I mean, good on you for doing it. That's brilliant. And the point I was trying to make before, probably not very clearly, was about particularly in this, say, I know club rugby in Auckland really well, if they don't embrace the young people coming through, the thing that worries the New Zealand Rugby Union is who's going to run the clubs. Because all the people, like I say, who are of my generation and older, the clubs now, so many of them are full of Pacifica players. If they don't tap in, not just to the players, but to the families and so on, if they don't tap into it, a lot of these clubs are not going to survive. They're going to fall over because there's going to be no one to run them. To answer your question is how do you do that? I think that's up to, for instance, the unions or the league to educate the people currently in there and get them to understand that these people are the future, whether they like it or not. This is the future of sport in New Zealand, and particularly in Auckland, and they need to embrace it. And they need, like I said before, they need to change. I know plenty of young people who would do the jobs, but you're very brave because you took it on. I know plenty, like even younger females who want to be in rugby clubs and do that sort of work. They love it. They just want to be part of the club and do that sort of thing. So I think it's really up to the people running the games to start looking into it and looking at what they're doing and start changing the people, talking to them about, getting them to understand their clubs will probably die if they don't open up a bit and embrace the young people coming in and help them out. because they're a little bit reluctant, some of them.
The good thing about it is most of the rugby league clubs are dead. You know? So it's an evolution that, you know, when I look at it, you know, and the old boys that are in some of these clubs that won't move aside and let young people like us come in and help, they're not going to be there anyway in the future. So we just have to hang tough. You know, good people like you should be rewarded and I suppose, you know, celebrated and congratulated for having the courage to stay in that club. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Brian's dead right. There needs to be an educational system that gets put into the clubs, and then there needs to be a couple of positive clubs that actually make a change, because our community like to see positive action. So in rugby league, all the clubs were basically the same. But now what we've done over the last 3 years is we've had a real focus on clubs, and we've got 3 or 4 now that are starting to make a real difference. And that's when we're getting other clubs. If you look at Monaco, for instance, it's been around for 100 years, and they won Club of the Year nationally. Now, if you went there 5-10 years ago, then they're Buckleys. You know what I mean? But because of a program that sees positive change, you're putting programs in place where you're affecting change on the sideline, you're affecting change in your adolescence, you're educating the young people, because I think you have to bottom fill, not top fill. So get the right people along to educate them. It then becomes easy, but it's evolution. It's not going to happen overnight. So unfortunately, Fire, you're going to be my age before you get on that board.
A young 21 there, Tony.
Silly, I thought you weren't going to try and get away with young people like us. And I think too with the administration game, there's it's not unlike the athlete situation we're talking about. There's elite sport, there's professional sport, there's community sport. So I think, you know, and I don't think it's just rugby league. I think all sports got an issue at club and community level, where we're reliant on a cast of thousands, none of whom get paid. You know, so there's a couple of challenges here, and I think I'm not sure that this is the forum, I guess, to fix community level sport top to bottom. But I think, you know, the issue, as I heard it, was about how do we get more people from these communities in the halls of power, in and around the decision making that goes on, that influences the way that the commercial value that our athletes generate benefit from. And I think that's a much tougher ask, you know, in terms of how you get more Pacifica and Māori people on boards and in national offices and in, you know, the NRL, you know, and you know, while, you know, the NRL has done some stuff in recent years, you know, with the employment of, I don't know, Nigel Vangana has a role in and around the welfare and education, but it's, you know, I guess some of it, if you're cynical, like a bit like I am, part of that's just about, you know, controlling the resource and making sure that actually, you know, this livestock that makes it all work for us feel happy and content because we look after them. And I think we've got to be able to get past that cynical treatment of us at that level. And that's a much bigger ask. I think the Pacific Business Trust, one of the things that we did last year with the first New Zealand Pacific Island Sports Awards, was sponsored a sports administration category. One of the reasons I was keen to do that, so, you know, I have a vested interest in the space even now because of the business of sport. Sponsor an unsexy category in administration, because part of it is, in the same way that every kid wants to be Sonny Bill, we've got to make that pathway more aspirational as well. We've got to highlight some heroes in that space. And Don Mann, who won the inaugural award, wasn't an iconic player. I mean, his father and his brother were Kiwis. You know, his brother a foundation warrior and had all the profile. You know, Don has gone on with the business of spending the last 12 years as a senior administrator, senior manager in a high profile, you know, sports organisation, on the back of his education and applying himself to that space. So, I think part of it is getting the message across. Don and I have spoken about this after he won the award last year. One of the things that he said is that if more of our young people understood that they're actually a much better chance of getting jobs like you had and I have if they apply themselves to education than they are of aspiring to be the next Sonny Bill. You're actually a much better chance of getting a senior administration gig if you apply yourself to your education, your development, and you look for opportunities than you are of being a high-profile, athlete. And I think so part of it is that switch out that in our own thinking as a community, that the only way up and out is on field. I think there's just so few players actually make it there.
We've got two questions that are waiting on the floor. I'm just taking a message from Sam and Manuko via Twitter, who says all brawn, no brain means easier for unscrupulous people to take advantage of good Pasifika sports people. So interesting comment from Sam there. I'm going to go to this Sam here, and then I'll come to Sunny.
Hi, my name is Sam Sifuiva. I'm one of 6 Māori or Pacific independent directors with Rugby League that was brought in to try and change the face of Rugby League to be a lot closer to its own community and stuff like that. And I totally agree with the comments that have been made by the panellists. One of the concerns that I have is that while we might want to pick and all the things that are wrong, one of the things we have to understand as a country in Aotearoa is that we're dealing with essentially 2 codes, which is rugby or rugby league, which are basically immature in the professional game. They're only learning how to be a professional sport, and whilst that's a pretty weak, could be seen as a weak excuse, that is a reality. If you compare, say, to the sector that I come from, which is in football, football has been a professional sport for over a century, and they're still going through a lot of these issues today. And one of the things that we want to try and do is, at all levels, try and draw out the very best of what we have. And unfortunately, in this country, it's volunteers trying to run a business, or trying to turn sport into a business enterprise. One of the things that and it is about duty of care. It is about trying to look at what are the things where there are some good entry points, not only for our young people but also for our parents. For them to are passionate about their game, to be a lot more involved than just being the person on the sideline yelling at their kids. And so we've got to try and create those sort of opportunities. One of the things that I guess just want to ask the panel really is to sort of say, so what would you be doing today, knowing what you've learned over the last 5 years about the rapid change from 2-3 codes that have had to put their whole thinking of amateurism on its head and become an industry, knowing full well that we've got, particularly in rugby league, where you've got tons of kids who I know from my work with Auckland Rugby League, where it's been, 60% of those kids end up in Australia. And they're in the worst financial situation with their families and they're locked up with those particular contracts with clubs. So that's a massive challenge for us in the governance end. But what I want to know is that what are the things that we need to be saying, okay, what are the little things we can do right now in our respective parts that we play, whether we be a player's agent, whether we be a high performance manager, whether we be a parent, whether we be a school principal or a business development person. So what are those things that we can do right now which gives some confidence to our parents and to those young people?
Sam, just from my perspective, I answer that question every day. I get a phone call every second day from parents asking, what am I going to do? My 14, 15-year-old son has been offered a contract and they want to take him to Australia. Parents don't know any better. That's the first problem. The second problem is that most of our kids are from a lower socioeconomic area, so their education is below par anyway. The NRL have a no study, no work, no play. So they're one being bullshitted to from these people to try and get them over to Australia in the first place. To answer your question, the wider community needs to stand up. If we had I've thought long and hard about this. If we had a blanket coverage of a stand-up campaign and said that our community need to talk to each other, to the right people, to send the artery to the right people before that family made a decision, then they would make a better decision. Currently, they're making a decision under a load of clouded judgment. And that judgment is if you look at where it ends up, is being led by the NRL. So the NRL are filtering competitions because Peter's hit the nail on the head. They need to put a competition on that shows at the end of 26 weeks that they've got this fantastic semi-final and final series played in Sydney. And the broadcasters pay billions of dollars for it. It's all based on money. What happens at the back end of it is in the washing machine. You hear about the 500, it was 720 people went to Australia this year at a rugby league. You don't hear about the 500 kids that come back. So, you know, what happens to those? What I say to the parents is, if your kid is being spoken to and he's 14 and 15, and possibly in the sixth form at school, then tell him to stay at school. Look at the pathways that are here in New Zealand and leave that kid in that system. He's better being supported by his own family. The reason I said have a blanket approach is then go through your networks. And the arteries, if you get them right, will lead you to the right people to help you make an educated decision. We don't do that. You know, at 14 we send them, well, the NRL now is not allowed to talk to kids until they're 15, but at 15, it's not just the kids that are going, the parents are using it as a ticket as well. Okay, so that's it's not just the player. Polynesian families are now seeing they're smart. You know, that's a thing that the people don't understand about Polynesians. They're smart. They'll see the kid go. They'll see the ticket on the end of it for them to get the opportunity behind that kid. I know of a parent over there at the moment that's set up a base camp in Sydney on the back of his kid. He's taken his whole family over there. Their business is thriving because this kid's playing NRL. And good on them, you know what I mean? But what happens when that kid stops playing? Because it's on the back of this kid playing NRL.
I'll take your question, Sonny. Folks, we're almost there for time. We've got about 7 minutes. I'm going to roll as quickly as we can.
Hi, my name is Sonny. I just want to push the question that was asked earlier on about getting into the boardroom positions. So I hear you say they need to do this and they need to do that, but obviously not. What can be done to force that issue? But I'd hate to think all we have to do is, we just have to wait until that becomes available. Is there anything we can do to force that issue, to make them look at those issues?
Can I answer that? Because I'm one of those people.
Yep. You've got 60 seconds, Sam.
You've just got to be persistent. You've just got to, and I was fortunate enough to, I'm successful at what I do, and a number of others, and you've just got to be in the right frame at the right time. You just got to be consistent. You just got to keep going.
I think the main reason that I'm still where I am now is because I understand why I wanted that job, and because I actually can say I've seen from a community, I've seen all three levels. My brother plays, I manage a team, and I'm the club secretary. So I've seen all three levels at a community base, what it takes to be able to hold everything together. And for me, understanding why I wanted that role is why I kept at the people who were making decisions. And I actually stood back and watched 1 year my club make every decision they made. And that's what motivated me, because I knew that my club could do so much more with the right people. And I fought to go up there. And when I was questioned, I answered for myself. I stood up for myself and I said, I do have the qualifications to stand up and speak. I've had board experience. I've had, I've been on the ground level. I've managed teams. I've got a brother that plays. What else do you guys want? I have everything that you could possibly want for in a volunteer. I've seen every level of your community or your club organisation. So I think that you do have to fight. You have to have you have to be really resilient, because people will come at you with personal attacks and everything, but you have to be resilient. And then if you have someone there who's going to support you and who supports what you're there for, family, someone who, even on the inside, who who sees what you want to do and they're there to support you, that's what motivates you to carry on, and that's what motivated me. Like, that's why I never gave up, and that's why I'm hoping that at my AGM this year, that the work that I've done with my club this year has been strong enough or been positive enough that people want us back next year.
Sorry, I was just going to. I think there's a bigger issue here as well, and I think it's not just in sport. And Sam will be aware of this. You know, in business, in the public sector, there is a push generally for greater diversity on boards and in leadership roles. So there's a much bigger challenge. There's a much bigger challenge at play here, and that's one: how do you support the development of more people from the front line and from those communities to challenge in that space, but part of it's also just about visibility. So there's a lot of work going on in and around how do we make sure that we people who can roll into these roles, and many corporates. I mean, I was at a diversity conference recently where you had the likes of Russell Stannis from Vodafone talking about the importance of diversity in their workplace to their bottom line. And the corporate sector is waking up to the fact that actually diversity equals profit, because happy workplaces that look like the communities that they serve actually do better in business as well. So I think there's a little bit of catch up here, and sport is a long way, I guess, behind both public and private sector in terms of those types of development. Rugby league has been through a metamorphosis in the last 5 years or so. Most sports are dealing with it, but again, you're dealing with community level issues. But I think, there's no easy answer to that. What I would say is I've never been a Kiwi. I never played NRL, never played in the Super League. I left South Auckland in the mid-'80s to spend 4 years in the foreign landscape that was Palmerston North at that time, and got myself a degree and applied myself to the things that I did. I was always involved at club level as a player, to this day, I've spent the last 5 years trying to get the sack as a junior coach and manager at my own club, but I can't. It doesn't happen. I just think there are a whole lot of things that we can do to help ourselves. But as a community, and I think Tony got hit this too. We collectively need to demand more as well, and expect more from each other. One of the things that hasn't been spoken about here, and I might hand the microphone to Ralph after this, because it is a big issue for our code. I'm not sure. I can't speak for rugby. But sometimes we have to protect ourselves from our own, in and around our code. You bowl along to any club ground in the country, and you got every second clown there purporting to be a scout for for an NRL club, and they're given a card, and they're given a clipboard, and they're given a cap, and that's pretty much their credentials. So I think there's a lot of expectation created on the back of not understanding this landscape. So as a community, one of the things that we need to do is be better informed. Be better informed about what the landscape actually looks like, and then manage our risk better. As part of that, not just manage our risk, but manage the risk for our kids. Because Tony's right, the number of young people that end up, in the washing machine that is the Australian system. Professional sport. The other thing to understand about it, I guess, in terms of what drives things, is where the money is. You've got to understand where the key drivers are. In rugby league, the key drivers are the NRL and the Super League. That's where the money is. That's where the rules are made, and that's pretty much how it all happens, and that's where people who aspire to be part of that pathway gravitate to. Rugby union's a slightly more complex landscape, but again, it's driven by where the big value is generated. To be fair to the national bodies, though, the value that's generated in that professional space is what funds a lot of the grassroots activity as well. So you've got to be able to balance those things, but understanding the landscape first and foremost, I think, is where our community needs to be.
Folks, we've extended by about 10 minutes, so I've just been told I hope that's okay. If you need to go, just go. We'll just keep talking. But I want to shift the conversation ever so slightly. We've now got the 4 nations in rugby. We've added Argentina. And in netball, we have 4 nations, or the Quad Series. We've got Australia, New Zealand, England, and South Africa. Yet we've never played an All Black Test over in the Pacific. What is it about the money, the business, that isn't going to take the game into Samoa, Tonga, Fiji? Any thoughts?
I can talk from our perspective. The reason we don't go to the islands is because it's commercially not viable. in simple terms. Generally, when a Pacific team wants to play against the Kiwis, we have to pay for it. You know, the islands are cash poor. They can field very good sides these days. You'll see the World Cup in 2013, Samoa, Cook Islands, Tonga, the indigenous players all around the Pacific. Most of them will come out of the NRL, but unfortunately their governing bodies, when they need to put on key events, cannot sustain a commercial product that has a benefit to our organisation, but also a benefit to their own. So, if we break even on any of those games, then we'll put a game on. But 9 times out of 10, you don't break even. So the reason, you know, if we are going to play those island teams, we generally play them in New Zealand because we get a crowd, and the crowd generates the income that we can pay them for, because you've got insurances and player wages and all sorts of extra income that you got to pay. And then also you get the game that the Kiwis need before they go on tour. So that's from a league perspective the reason why we don't go into the islands currently.
Has that been your experience with the Black Ferns, Brian?
Well, no funding.
Yeah.
No, we do okay. I mean, obviously you want more, but we are, the All Blacks are they are the market, and that's it. So we understand that, and I mean, that's what makes that team great, the whole adversity thing. The players are, they're all working, but they train like professionals. We do get quite well looked after, to be honest. This year's been pretty good. We've had a camp and going on a tour, so that's nice. But it's never ever going to pull any money in, so that's the harsh realities, and the players accept that, and we just get on with it and win every World Cup rather than just the odd one.
Yeah.
And Brian makes a good point. I mean, as fantastic as the Black Ferns have been over the years, and in our own code, the Kiwi Ferns, it's never going to pull any money. It's part of the problem is professional sport relies on attracting eyeballs, you know, and that's what they sell, and that's, you know, that's really the bottom line and around this, and it's one of the challenges for development of the sport in the regions, and investing in development in the regions. You know, one of the things that I've been doing this year is helping out some guys I know who are involved in Samoan Rugby League with a strategic planning exercise. I don't want to sit on any committees or, you know, that's, but I thought it was important for them to have some perspective in and around the professional game, the international game, as they were shaping up their own strategy. They've got a number of NRL clubs that are keen to talk to them. And I've said, as long as you understand that those clubs actually don't care about your flag, they don't care about development back in the islands. What they care about is getting access to the best players. But they all have, you know, 7-figure recruitment and development budgets that if you can get a corner of that, you can do some good back there. You can do some good with the players that you're bringing through from here. But as long as you understand that they actually don't care about your flag and they don't care about development in the islands, bottom line, then you leverage that relationship in the way that best suits you.
So do sports agents visit the Pacific?
No, yes, there are, but again, it's, I mean, just to, you know, it's a pretty obvious one. Let's just reinforce what everyone else on here on the panel says. It's just not commercially viable, and it's just the way it is. The Pacific will never, I mean, unless there's some sort of cash injection or some sort of capital injection of some sort, it's just not going to happen. And same with, there are player managers that do go out. So obviously, yeah, we do go out into the Pacific. And the thing is, you have to always remember is that in terms of rugby, and I'm just speaking just for rugby here, is that this is the place to be. If you want to be a rugby player and you want to get noticed and you want to move up the food chain, then what you'll see is there's like, I have a few Tongan boys that have come from Tonga that are in the Counties Manukau system, that are in the Auckland system, because by coming, you know, they have all the raw talent, and because, unfortunately, in the islands, they're under-resourced, and they don't have the facilities and the fields and the physios and nutritionists and all the information to provide that, you know, the extra kick just to help them fulfill their potential. They come here, and when they do come here, they do have access to and it's surprising, even amateur level. You know, the clubs, some of these clubs, especially in Auckland, with the Grama Carltons, and they provide a lot of stuff for a lot of the players. You know, from petrol money to, you know, even assistance or subsidizing accommodation. So all these things help. And so I think for any sort of player, even in the islands, a lot of them do come either here or to Australia, because at least if they come here, their talent can be nurtured and developed. But then the real challenge is, will they go back?
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge for every Polynesian athlete that does come from the islands, like, because, if they don't go back, then it's just going to be the same old. But it's just, I don't know, that's probably part of the real challenge for all of us here is if they do go back, if they do use the training things that they've learnt over in New Zealand or Australia or wherever, and then put that back into the Pacific, which is, again, a broader question to ask.
So essentially the codes don't care about it, so that's what we're saying. I'll take this last question from the floor here.
It's a statement and also a question. My name's Peter Apple and I'm a careers practitioner. So seeing sport and careers, there's a diversity of all the places that the kids can come from. I actually deal with a lot of the kids out in South Auckland that come to Best for an Education, but a lot of them actually come from broken dreams. When we sat at the very beginning, a lot of those kids were either went overseas, and we seem to sit with the grassroots guys and of the dreams they had that have broken, and it's literally broken their spirit. So that's now been the platform of where they come from, so it's our role to actually get them generated back. So my first question is how do we deal with that situation? Because I see it every day on a grassroots level. The second one is, as a careers practitioner, my role is to open up the eyes of those who are out there in the industry in terms of getting our kids into opportunities. And one of the challenges for me is finding apprenticeships in those particular industries, be it business, be it education, but in the sports arena, in terms of administration, are there any pathways, career pathways where those students can go into, or my students can go into, in terms of not necessarily sport, but administration, because a lot of them have strong administration skills, but not the concept of sport, but they're able to transition into that. So do we have something at the moment that we could direct students towards a pathway into that sports field? Because I think it's huge. But my mum and my dad see sports as there's a $100,000 contract there, yeah. And most of our parents out South Auckland are literally pushed by that desire to get money, not because they want the money for status. It's about building a future, feeding their family. And my concern is, like you're saying, when that's gone, and we see about, I think, Sumali, where every boy that comes through talks about league and rugby. I'm actually wanting them to think about, let's be a doctor, let's be an administrator. So how do we, like you were saying, find opportunities where those kids can go to? And in terms of diversity, you're quite right. The change in the face of Auckland in terms of business, we were sitting with Vodafone and BNZ in the last couple of weeks, and the drive between going to the forward is getting women and people that are ethnic. And I don't think we're actually doing something about it in terms of what strategic plan are we doing for our kids to do that, to move forward. Probably blab on because I'm a passionate careers practitioner.
Can I give you about a minute each, folks, because we're just about there for time, but try and encapsulate all of that, and we'll come down the road because I know that everyone wants to participate in this
You
discussion.
might have to call time though. The first part really comes back to what we're trying to do at schools with the kids. At the end of the day, Pacifica Māori students in New Zealand, they're called part of the tail. So the first job is just overall to lift their expectation. And that comes from me and my staff saying, you will pass and you'll do well. That's the first dream you've got to establish with them, because the sport one, honestly, it's got to be secondary. So what we do at school is we never ever, and I'm a sports nut. I mean, I coach the first 15, and but I never ever celebrate sport without linking it to achievement. And the boys know that, and they know me, and they know I don't want to talk to them about sport first. I want to talk about their work, how's that going, and then I'll chew the fat with them about their sport. But it's about expectation, particularly for our Pacifica and Māori kids, is saying this is a bar, and they're all totally capable, and it's just us again. We've got to drive that and make them know that your dreams are possible, and if you can do well in sport, that's awesome too. That's pretty simple to me.
Cool. Thanks, Brian.
44 games average in the NRL. 22% of NYC players go on to play the NRL. So the first thing is you say to them, stay home. Yeah. All right? There's pathways here, and if you're good enough, they will see you and they will come and see you. So don't let people tell you that you need to go to Aussie to be seen. So if you get seen in this pathway, then you've got a better chance of being those percent players. The second thing in and around opportunities for your students, one of the initiatives that we put in place when I started with the football department was we brought in one co-op student, final year study in exercise science. The second year I brought 2 in, this year I've got 6. They give me 400 free hours each for the year. They each get a specific NZRL program from our grassroots through to our high performance. Some of them work with the Kiwis, some of them work with our kids, but they get a hands-on administrative approach. We treat them as workers. They apply for the position, they go through an interview, we tell them right at the front end, this is a job, it's not a co-op position, just remove that attitude from them straight away, and then we go about looking at supporting them for the whole year through our programs. At the end of it, we now have 3 of those kids that work for the NZRL. So if you've got some good kids, send them down. Start taking applications in January.
This whole topic, I think, throughout the evening, I'm a little bit sad to hear that everything is the sort of the ground base for this is money. The second thing for me as a parent, as a mum, is 14 and 15-year-olds. I would not expect that I would send Jelly anywhere at 14 and 15 to do anything like that. So, these things are very, very new to me. Then maybe it's I do think our parents are lost, and if you're thinking of your child like that, that's a commodity, like you say, not as for a money thing, but just in welfare for your family. And I think then the aspiration of learning has been lost in that you're aspiring for your person to be a sports player. You've taken away from, and it doesn't have to be a doctor or just the bus driver or the plumber, the electrician. What those roles, as I say, the cleaner, those are still positions and roles that you should, being in paid employment is a privilege. So, for me, the topic is quite sad. I came on being invited to come and speak as a mother of a sports person. As I said, I don't even like sports. I didn't follow. My son is married to a former Silver Fern captain, and I watch netball, but I, just try and add bits here and there. But for my young children, it was whatever they wanted to do, and sadly, I didn't want any of them to aspire to being a sports person. It was just to be what they wanted to be. Jelly always wanted to be a doctor. And I just thought he was making things up. I wouldn't have worried what he did. I actually thought he was cheating at school when he was at grammar, getting all those high marks. He was really upset for the rest of them. But I think, for parents, I'm really sad to know that if parents are sending their children or thinking about their children going overseas at 14 and 15, then there's something definitely wrong. And out in South Auckland, we boast AUT, this very centre, we've got the highest Pacific population out here. We must have, pathways and schools and people that help, not at the sports level, but at any level. They should be able to come, they should be able to knock on any door on any school in this area and ask, what do you have for my child? What can they learn or where can they go? Not about passing the ball, kicking the ball, running, it's like, that's great if you've got that gift. But just being someone that's respectful, being someone that's grounded, being someone who learns, helps their family, is good to the person next to you, is, to your neighbour. That whole trickle-down effect from being someone good. Not, I only went to watch Jelly so he wouldn't get hurt. That's the honest opinion. I didn't. That's what he wanted to do. And Jelly's commitment for anything that he put his hand to was always, he gave everything all the time. I was sad when he got injured because, he couldn't play anymore, but he watches all the time, he goes. For the other children, they didn't want to play sort of at a top level or learn academically because watching him, he was so serious for everything. They played for the enjoyment factor and they studied because 50% was a pass mark and they were glad with that. So, I'm quite sad that parents would think that their child at 14 or 15, that you would think will put that pressure or something on your child to be like that. So please, all the people that are in this room, I bet your parents, you know, you send your children to school or whatever. If they don't like school, then there are other places, you know, they've got other opportunities or pathways in other areas. You know, they've got alternate schools and they've got open polytechnic, they've got something learning, even staying home and doing the dishes. You know, that's blooming doing work and helping out. Because whenever Jolly was away, that meant somebody else had to do all his chores. Great that you're sleeping in a hotel and driving around and doing all those things, but at home, you've still got to come back and do the dishes, take out the washing, you know, change your sisters and help with the cooking and things like that. So learning, it is all about learning from the ground level and not just to aspire to be a sports person, just being a good person, you know, is something very important.
Awesome, thanks Evelyn. Folks, just for those people who are online at the moment, we're going to lose the feed in just a moment. Just a reminder that we do have more Talanoa sessions coming to you in early 2013, but we will end our, we'll continue our discussion here, so these people will benefit and you can stay online, and because we're getting a number of tweets at the moment that I can't talk about. So I'll just, but we've got tweets from the Manu Samoa. There's people in the Pacific and Australia at the moment who are tweeting like crazy. So we'll continue the discussion and then we'll bring our forum to a close. Leo Pipi.
To continue on the same track? Yeah, just to answer, just to give a perspective on the education aspect of what you're talking about in regards to your players and even the ones with broken dreams. I mean, again, it's a question of where the onus lies. Is the onus to educate or provide that education for the support network? Is that from the support network, or is that from the player management? Or is that for the club? Is it for the franchise? So, I mean, at the end of the day, part of what we do with the way we do our management is, because of our education background, is education's massive for us, and it's just a big thing for a lot of our players, like every player that we have, the young guys. And the funny thing is, it sounds so basic, but it's really funny when you talk to the boys. The experience I've had of my boys is, you know, I'll say, you know, what do you want to do with rugby? And they go, oh, school sucks, man. It's like that's the way they talk, you know, and they're like, no, I just don't like school, and that's the way the boys talk. And, you know, getting around that dialogue is just, the main thing is, part of what I try to do with my players is I just try to find their passion, and that's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, not everyone's going to be, you know, Jeremy was amazing, the fact that he was a doctor. Not every player's going to be a doctor, not every player's a lawyer, not every player's going to be an accountant, but it doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, if you can find what you're passionate about in the education sense, then you can focus on that. And, you know, the example I've got with one of the players I've got was, you know, he's now in a franchise in Australia, playing for one of the Australian teams there. But when we first got him 3 years ago, I said, you know, what are you into? And he said, oh, they like school, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, what do you like then? And he said, oh, cars. I go, what do you mean by cars? And he goes, oh, I like engines, man. Bro, they're mean. Engines are mean. So I said, oh, you know what? Let's look. So we found a course in Unitec. And again, it was just automotive. And it was something he did. So when he was coming through the Blues and he was coming through the Auckland, he was doing that part-time. But it's something he wanted to go to because he loved it. He was into it. It was a waste of my time trying to push education to him and say, oh, man, you got to do this. You got to do this business and blah, blah, blah. If it's a waste of time, because at the end of the day, he was never going to go. He was never going to turn up. But because he liked this aspect of education, and then when he did graduate, you know, the look on his face and the sense of achievement, you know, again, success breeds success. Because then after that, next thing he said was, I said, man, now you got it, man. Now, he said, oh, I'm going to be a mechanic. I said, you know what? Who says you have to be a mechanic after rugby? You should own your own mechanic shop. And then he said, you know what, I'm going to do business. So again, it breeds success. So once he got into that, you know, that little taste of a diploma, only 1 year, part-time, 2 years. But once he got it, once he had that piece of paper on the wall, and you know, now he's in Australia, but at the same time, he's had a taste. He knows what it is to achieve. He knows what it is to get something that he likes. And then from now, he's probably going to do a business diploma in Canberra. And again, it's just little bit by little bit, but again, focusing on the passion, utilizing that passion, and then just finding what part of education you can actually focus on. And I think that's important, again, with the support networks, player management, And yeah, that's just one part that I want to focus on.
Awesome, thanks.
Thought you might have started up there because it was all Samoans at this end, was it? Actually, I feel a bit bad for Evelyn that you've been a little bit deflated by this, particularly given that I'm the guy who started the evening with "they don't care," you know. So, but I think,
It's all your fault.
but I think, and as sad as I am that it's been a little deflating for you, Evelyn, I think that's actually part of the answer to your question. I think the fact that it's jarring to hear it is probably an important part of this. They need to hear that. And it's not that there aren't good people there, and it's not that they can't care. It's not their job to care. You know, that's not what they're about. It's our job to care. You know, we're from that community that they're from. So if the message is a little bit jarring in and around what the reality of professional sport looks like, then I think that's part of the answer. I think it's important that we jar people and we make sure that they understand so we can manage expectations. And I think the same's true of even, you know, education opportunities, you know, for kids to assume that getting a diploma in sport is going to get them a career in sport. There's not that many jobs in sport. There really aren't, you know, and I think it's important we manage those expectations as well. But sport is a perfectly valid vehicle for education as long as you get some tools you can apply to other things. I'm talking to you as a bloke with a degree in applied science who spent 8 years in agribusiness before I was fortunate enough to work for 12 years in sport. I'm sitting next to a barrister, you know, who now is fortunate enough to work in the stuff that he's passionate about. So it's not getting hung up about pathways that don't exist. And I think we have a responsibility as a community to make sure that we offer a reality check about those things and help those young people and their families. And some of that message is going to be a bit jarring. And one of those messages is they don't care, but they don't have to.
Thank you for the feedback. Obviously the answers are in my head too as well, but just to give you a positive feedback on that question, you know, 75% of the students we put into work anyway, but the dominant message for me, for everyone that's here, we've realised that all our kids really want is to be validated. That's all it is. To be validated that they mean something. And that's something that I've learnt being at Best already knew, but it's coming to the understanding that sitting with these kids day in and day out, even our adults, because we with mothers and fathers too, it's really a sense of validation of who they are. And I think that's the responsibility we have. And I suppose in the sports field, we'd like to see some validation around that too as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Folks, thank you very much for your participation this evening. It's been great to have you. Can I, on your behalf, thank the panel? I've been quite intrigued by the discussion. Whether it's been deflating or optimistic, I think it's really, yeah, I've got my own thoughts about it, but we're not here to listen to me. But I really appreciate how you've all come back to us, and some of you have just joined the panel. Some of you didn't know that we were streaming it live because I left that out of the email because I had a feeling you might not come. But you all look absolutely beautiful. You will look great on that camera, so you need not worry. Folks, the Talanoa Sessions will continue early next year. There's already some other topics we're considering, but we thought we'd go for a topic with some space that no one's really kind of had a chill at, had a think about. And it's been our privilege to be able to be here. Can I just offer our thanks as well to Anna Jacob and the team from Auckland Council who've provided the finance, which paid for the food and all of that, to have this evening. So on behalf of everyone, thanks so much for coming this evening, and keep an eye on our Facebook page because that's where we'll give you more notice around our next Talanoa session. But in the meantime, let's thank our panel and wish you all well. Thanks, everyone. I think there might still be tea and coffee outside, so